This is a story about borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. President Trump's one big, beautiful bill found a way to pay a lot of Pauls through reduced taxes, but taking funds away from Peters who have been dependent on things like Medicaid. Our special contributor, Larry Summers of Harvard, has been outspoken about what he says it will cost us over the long run.
David, this is the biggest cutback in the U.S. social safety net in history, measured relative to GDP. It's substantially larger than anything that happened in Ronald Reagan's revolutionary 1981 tax cut legislation. It's substantially larger relative to the economy than the welfare reform that took place during Bill Clinton's time. So this is a big deal. It's going to mean that some number, it's hard to evaluate exactly, might be 10 million, might be 12 million people are going to lose their Medicaid benefits. It's going to mean that ancillary services that are hugely important for people, getting a ride to the hospital so they can get their dialysis, being able to go to a rehab facility when they can't take care of themselves, but they no longer need to be in a hospital. That kind of thing is going to be cut back. It's going to mean no economic lifeline for desperately important rural hospitals, some of which are going to close. But here's a crucial point that I don't think has gotten enough attention in the debate. People focus on the moral aspect, and that's important, what's going to happen to some of the most vulnerable among us. But this has consequences for everybody. When people come to the hospital later and sicker, with more that needs to be done, and there's no government support for their care, the bills of all the rest of us are going to go up. When hospitals are filled with people who don't need to be in a hospital, but are there only because there's no other place for them to go, there's less access to care for others when they have an emergency. When rural hospitals close, that means less access, not just for the poorest people. When these costs mount and ultimately have to be borne, that's ultimately going to translate into higher taxes and greater premiums when the people eventually get sick enough that they qualify for the supported medical care. So this is both immoral and wrong, and it is imprudent and is going to burden the American middle class.
It's part of a larger pattern I think many people have detected in the bill overall, which is a shift in wealth from some of the poorest among us to some of the wealthiest among us. We can talk about whether that's a moral thing to do or an immoral thing to do, but what does it mean in macroeconomic terms, in terms of growth over the long term?
David, my values point me towards wanting us to be a more equal society. I don't think that those making estate wills to their children of $30 million should be the beneficiary of new largesse at a time when we've got a massive budget deficit. But I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think honest economists should make all arguments in favor of the policies they prefer. And the reason to oppose this bill is that it's unfair, that it's inefficient, that the deficits are going to do a great deal of damage. But I'm not going to tell you that because of the inequality, we're going to get major reductions in economic growth. Yes, we're going to get major reductions in economic growth because we're on a trajectory to cutting back R&D in very dangerous ways. Yes, we're going to get reductions in economic growth because we're going to cut back support for other kinds of public investment in education and in infrastructure. But the main reason to be against inequality is because it's wrong and because some of the investments you make to reduce inequality have very high payoffs. But while it would support the policies I generally favor, I am not, as an economist, going to say that we have convincing evidence that, as a systematic matter, reducing inequality raises economic growth.
Even as Trump's big bill will shrink the country's social safety net overall, one increase in federal spending will go toward supporting families, including through a single payment of $1,000 for a savings account for newborns. But Summers says he's worried it isn't enough.
My suspicion is that it is so subscale that most of the costs will go into administering the thing relative to benefits that will change people's lives. So I don't think we know yet, and maybe this will be an acorn that plants a very valuable tree that will grow over time, but I haven't yet seen the blueprint that convinces me of feasibility at the current scale.
We put in some of the lowest percentage of our GDP into early care and education in the United States of any developed country, and it's because we haven't yet made that leap from the idea that actually the care and learning of young children is very much a public concern.
Elliot Haspel at the think tank Capita says market forces alone aren't enough to solve the child care crisis in the United States, and the government needs to be doing more.
Childcare is not a market good. Former Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has called it a textbook example of a failed market. Doesn't work, so you're going to need some sort of government intervention. We can also look across the world and see other countries, including just above us in Canada, that have made major reforms in the past few decades, all of which are underpinned by significant permanent increases in public support of a public-private system to make sure that families have access to good childcare options, that educators are paid well, programs are high quality, and again, that there are guardrails in place to make sure that public money is serving the public good.
Haspel's view that government should play a bigger role in helping new parents is shared by Congresswoman Becca Balint, who was a former teacher herself.
The struggles that working families have right now, they are not the same struggles as people had 20 years ago. You know, you've got young people carrying a lot more debt. They have costs that did not keep pace with inflation. They exceeded them, whether they were housing costs or healthcare costs. So I always say to people, I'm in my 50s. I always say to voters who are grousing about younger families, I say, what they're doing actually is something very different than I did, and what folks in my parents' generation did. That the economic strain on them is more acute. And so there is this understanding that we need to gain, that you've got families who are absolutely stretched. And it is within our best interest as legislators, as people looking for solutions, to see this as part of the ecosystem of the economy and not an add-on. This is how you make economies thrive, and certainly other countries have figured this out before we did.
Even as state and federal lawmakers take steps to invest more in American families and childcare, Summers says we shouldn't be looking to Trump's big bill to save our kids. The costs might well outweigh the benefits, especially for future generations.
I think the borrowing that we're engaging in and the risks that poses to the economy may well do more harm to my children and my one-year-old granddaughter than the putative new programs that are contained.